Raider Nation, it's time. This is the Raiders Squad. Sponsored by Gametime. Everything Las Vegas Raiders every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Death Star in the desert. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Commitment to excellence starts here. The Raiders Squad Show starts now.
What's up, Raider Nation, and welcome back to the Raider Squad Show. Remember, if you like the content, hit that like and subscribe button. You can also follow us on our social media channels. You'll see in the description below the ways that you can connect with us. I'm Chantel Chan, joined alongside Lincoln Kennedy and Q Myers. We've got you covered for the entire Raider season, but especially during training camp, because inside scoop Q Myers, where else would he be except for the Raiders facility today during training camp? So on this show, we got a lot to get into. We're going to be talking about MALCOM KOONCE. We're going to be talking about the running back group. We're going to be getting into a lot, but we also got to touch on the moves the Raiders made. But before we do that, I got to mention our title sponsors for today. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at Monarch Money for 50% off your first year. All right, guys. Well, I feel like we got to start off the show with the biggest news, because we were kind of talking about it during, before training camp arrived, because now the vets are in the building since we did our last show. And I think the biggest news that we'll start off with is the fact that the Raiders have now acquired Jamal Adams, who, of course, has the history with Pete Carroll. And Q, will go with you first. Your thoughts on that move and what that does for the secondary.
Well, first, happy to be back at training camp. Let's go ahead and throw that out there. Shout out to Raider Nation. I know everyone's excited. I just walked the field here at the facility, and it's on and popping. So I'm excited about that. But on to your question, Jamal Adams, the thing about it, and Lincoln will I'm sure appreciate this, is that we talked to head coach Pete Carroll yesterday. He opened up training camp, and then the flurry of moves happened right after that. And it just went with the theme that Pete Carroll has had since he joined as the Raiders head coach, and that's compete. They all of a sudden brought in 5 guys, to come in for competition, and Jamal Adams being the biggest name. And what I'm excited about is if he is healthy, and that's a big if, because that's what's plagued his career, especially the last couple of years. If he's healthy, Pete Carroll knows how to use him. The first year that he was in Seattle, he had 9.5 sacks. Now, he's not a guy that's going to come away with 9 interceptions in a season. He's not that guy. But he is a guy that can get after the quarterback. He's a guy that can get a lot of TFLs. He could play up by the line of scrimmage, and he would be that guy that you don't want to going across the middle, because he'll lay the wood on you, right? But again, it's always going to go back to health with Jamal Adams. There's a lot of videos floating around social media he was putting out during his workout saying he's in the best shape of his life. But the reality is, as Lincoln always says, and I'll go to my grave with it, you don't make the club in the tub. He played 5 games total between 2 teams in 2024. So if he's healthy, he could be a hell of an asset. If he's not, well, then he's going to be competition for the guys that are in front of him for this Raider squad.
Relationships are key in any business. And Pete Carroll has a relationship with this young man, because there was a lot of promise and a lot of praise when the Seahawks made the trade to the Jets to get him, to acquire him. When coming off the heels his time at the Jets, he was a badass. I mean, he was notoriously known. And this was sort of add to the sort of second coming. This was projected to be sort of the second coming of Legion of Boom in Seattle. Never really came to fruition. And then he's been marred by a few injuries. But here's the thing. And this is key, because this is still a very young secondary. This experience of 89 games over his career is invaluable. With him and Jeremy Chin and Isaiah Palomal, and in that safety room, or back in that safety situation, the very minimum it gives them is depth to be able to have a rotation and one guy goes down. If Jamal Adams can stay healthy, that's first and fourth. And then if he can go out there and show and play like he used to. When he was in Seattle, he had a little bit of off the field issues, had a little bit of distraction, stuff like that. Really never caught on with the rest of everything that was going on a consistent basis. Showed times where he was going to be there. And then, of course, going around to Detroit and Tennessee, not really playing, asking for his release. Now he was in limbo. As Q said he trained, and we'll see what type of football shape he is when he gets in the building. But this could be a very good thing for the Raiders defense.
Yeah, it can. And the other thing about it is he's a guy that, like I said, he's a box safety. There's a world if this guy makes the squad, and again, you've got to go out there and make the squad. It's all about competition. Nobody's guaranteed anything. There's a real world where 3 safeties could be on the field at the same time. He could play that linebacker role and be that guy that's that enforcer up by the line of scrimmage. He could be a thumper. He could be a guy that follows the running backs out of the backfield, as Lincoln alluded to on the last time we were together on Monday. There's a lot of different ways you could use him. And again, if you go back and look at the first year that he was in Seattle with Pete Carroll, he had a hell of a season, but injuries hit him, and that's been the biggest issue. And so, I mean, you get 9.5 sacks from your safety the first year that he was there in Seattle. That's only a good thing. So I could see Patrick Graham and company getting very creative with them, but it's up to Jamal Adams to go ahead and make the squad.
And I love those reports about him being in the best physical shape that he's ever been in, because I love Jamal Adams when he was with the Jets. And then obviously that first year with the Seahawks was really, really good. But, you know, Lincoln made a good point. It's all about those relationships that you have in the building. And I think Pete Carroll bringing him in and seeing what the secondary had, and this wasn't kind of a shot to the secondary, but obviously they needed some veteran presence. And that's what we kind of talked about. And Jamal Adams does have a lot of experience in this league. Now, you know, Link, will go with you first. When you're being brought in as a vet, and there are still some vets in the secondary, but also on this team, but you're being brought into the secondary and you're the guy with the veteran leadership, you know, how much pressure falls on you? Because I feel like he's going to be the main key guy in this secondary.
Not any more pressure than an athlete naturally puts on themselves. You know, I will say this: you walk into the locker room, you have 1 or 2 ways of handling it. You can humble your position that you're walking in locker room, a new locker room, new faces and everything. You might see some old guys that you played with or played around with, so you might know them. But you can either humble yourself walking in the locker room, or you can strut like a flamingo, like your stuff don't stink. And I'm not going to use the right language because we're on online. But the thing is that there are ways that veterans approach this. Okay, I'm here. I want to help the team. I want to show my value. I want to, and for Jamal Adams, I have to think, you know what? I didn't do anything last year. And a lot of people have written me off. Pete Carroll has given me another chance. Much of the words that Geno Smith said when he came down from Seattle, right? That's where he goes to that relationships. So if Pete Carroll and Jamal Adams could derive that relationship that draws out the better player in him, much back to the days of New York Jets, much back to the days of the first year of Seattle, this will be a good thing for the Raiders.
Yep.
Absolutely. There are many times Patrick Graham wants to have 3 safeties because he can change up his coverages. But more importantly, you're able to put a safety in the box that knows how to tackle. That's big. That is huge. Okay. Takes better angles, knows how to tackle and help you with that run game. So this could be a very good thing. And I think Jamal Adams will humble himself as he goes in. What do you think, Hugh?
I think he has to humble himself because of everything that you said and the way that his career has gone. Because when he was in New York and we all knew he was on the trade block, man, I pounded every single table for the Raiders to go get him. He's an alpha dog. His leadership is second to none. I mean, the dude comes from football, football background. He has the family lineage there. So he knows what it's about to be in the NFL. His career has just got off track due to the fact that he's been banged up and he's been injured. So again, as long as he's able to be healthy, he could be a great addition and really a guy that provides that leadership in that secondary and even on the field. He could really do some good things, but he's just got to find a way to stay healthy. But I love the fact that the moves were made before the very first day of practice, right? I think that Pete Carroll and John Spytek really set a tone of what it's going to be to make this squad. You are going to earn your spot. They are already bringing in other guys before they ever hit the field on day 1 of practice. So if I'm in that locker room, I am not getting comfortable at all. I'm making sure that I'm out there on my A game every single day, and I'm competing at the highest level, just like Pete Carroll said. And he even said in the presser, he wants this to be the hardest training camp that these guys have ever had in their lives. And so I'm here for it. I'm excited about it. And I think that bringing in the players that they brought in on yesterday, I think that was really kind of setting the tone.
Yeah, and I think that kind of says a lot to the locker room too, because thinking about it, like you're only like day 1 training camp and you're like chilling, you're thinking, okay, this is my competition. And then all these new guys come in, you know, I feel like it kind of puts pressure on your back, right? Link, have you ever been in that situation where that has happened?
Oh, yeah. It's a revolving door during training camp. I mean, because we have what we call camp bodies. Veterans will know camp bodies, and they're there because, you know, look, they might be trying to make the team, but the rosters and guys, and I've said this before, they're pretty much made up once you come through OTAs and minicamps. You fine tune. Now you might find a gem like a Jamal Adams, a hidden gem that's out there that might add a little bit to your defense. But for the most part, these rosters are made up. So when we see the flurry of bodies or newcomers that come into the locker room, it's almost like a revolving door. You, as a veteran, you handle it. Look, I'm gonna go out there and handle my business. And of course, if you're a veteran new to the team, you want to prove your value, prove that you deserve to be here. You want to win a job. So there's all that. And of course, there's the young guys, the unrestricted free agents, or some of the newcomers that might not have a lot of the stature behind their name. They've got to compete for a job. So you got to have camp bodies, because you got to have guys that you can put in and out there, a scout team, or guys that you can beat up on. But if Pete Carroll, proclaims this to be the most competitive training camp in Raiders history, you got to watch out for injuries too, because we're also starting with a couple guys, Christian Wilkins, on the injured list, but guys have to get healed up so they are ready to play for the regular season. You can have a competition, physical, violent training camp, however you want to look at it, but you got to make sure guys get their proper rest, they manage their bodies well, and then they able to go out there for day 2 or day 3. Like I said, you can't make the club in the tub, so you got to be available.
The one thing to pay attention to is if you go back and see what Pete Carroll did his first year there in Seattle, he had about 280 to 300 different roster moves that he made. So he is not a guy that's shy when it comes to tinkering with the roster and moving the guy up, moving the guy down, bringing the guy in, moving the guy out, right? So that's the one thing that, again, in the back of your head, even if you feel like you're pretty comfortable in your position, you know that you're going to make the squad, you still know that there's some young dude behind you that might not be as talented as you, but is willing to work harder than you. Yeah, I think it gives a little bit more motivation, a little bit more push to go out there and work your tail off on that day of practice.
And just one added point to that, Q, because it's a great point. If the club can find someone who can do as a starter, I don't care, veteran, whatever, as good of a job, maybe not as excel as much, but as good as a job, and comes cheaper, business. There's business first, right? So the Raiders have money to spend, so it's not, but it's not up to it. But future standards, you go with a cheaper guy. You can go with a try-hard guy that's going to get you over the hump, that's going to get you through this season, and will not necessarily have to be a standout, but will do the job if he's cheaper. So things to worry about as well.
Yeah, great point by Q, because Pete Carroll not only makes moves before training camp, during training camp, but even midseason. Like, the Seahawks were always making moves midseason as well. Let's get to the other guys that they ended up picking up. Philip Dorsett, who I believe was with the Raiders as well, but he didn't end up making the team. I can't remember when that was, but I think that's interesting that they brought him in as a wide receiver. Antonio Mafi, who's a guard, you might have something to say with him on the O-line, because I feel like the O-line, there has to be some depth because guys do get injured.
Yes.
So that's really important. Also, Seth Williams, the wide receiver, and safety JT Woods. Are any of those names popping out to you guys that could make the list? Or are you thinking camp bodies, competition?
Mafi stands out to me. He has familiarity, going back to what Lincoln said at the top about relationships. He's got a relationship with Chip Kelly. He was there at UCLA with Chip Kelly. So if anybody knows how that guy can go, it would be Chip Kelly. And anyone who knows about this Raiders team knows that this offense is going to go as Chip Kelly goes, as the offensive coordinator. So, of course, he's going to want to have as much familiarity in the building as possible. So I think that that's a sneaky good pickup. I think that's going to add to the competition at the guard spot in this training camp. That's one of the battles that I'm going to be focused in on. So I think Mafi is a really big deal, being able to pick him up and reuniting him with Chip Kelly, he's got a lot of familiarity with.
As far as the other guys go, I think Philip Dorsett and JT Woods, defensive back, just add depth. I think they add the camp body status that you need. I expect some good things out of Mafi. The times that I've seen him, his play was solid, but he has the room for improvement. And the reason why it's important as far as guards go with this offensive line, because other than the starting five, and we're still projecting how the starting five is going to be, there's not a lot of depth. Especially in the internal part of that offensive line, there's not a lot of depth. So if you bring in a guy, and of course they're young guys too that haven't really had the experience of playing on the National Football League level, but you bring in a younger guy who has that experience with Chip Kelly. He knows the dialogue. He knows all the orientation of being already orientated to the offense. This is a good thing for the Raiders.
Yeah, and the guys that they ended up waiving, Mello Dotson, Zakari Franklin, Keyshawn Smith, and Jalen Walker. So moves already being made for the Raiders. Before we get to the next segment and hear from our sponsors, because we're going to be talking about Malcolm Koonce, Q, the vibes right now at training camp, is it intense? Is it fun? I know that, Pete Carroll's saying it's going to be a very, very tough training camp. So what's it like so far there in that building?
Yeah, no, it's exciting, man. There's a lot of juice, a lot of energy. I was just out on the field, and there's a good vibe. The music is going. Looks like there's going to be more fan interaction this year than we've ever had since the Raiders have been here in Las Vegas. So that's something to get excited about. And Pete Carroll said in his presser yesterday that he's going to try to accommodate as many fans as possible. And so I think that's great for Raider Nation to start to see this team really being put together in 2025. So yeah, man, there's a lot of juice, a lot of energy. The fields look great. Everyone feels great. It's like the first day of school, right? Everyone's got their fresh haircut, got their brand new outfit. They're ready to go show it off and, talk to the girls on the schoolyard, right? I mean, it's what it seems like. It's the first day of school. Everyone's excited.
Yeah, and Link, what about for you? Because I feel like every coach will always say this is the toughest training camp. I feel like we hear that every season.
Yeah, well, look, training camp, like I told my son, because he's playing high school football and he's away at training camp. He's like, man, I'm not looking forward to it. It's a necessary evil. It really is. It's part of the game. Nobody likes to go to training camp. Hell, nobody likes practice, but we're talking about practice, right? Anyways, the thing is that these young guys have a chance to go out there and prove themselves to the staff, and it's a critical year because it's a transition year. When you bring in a new coaching staff and new players at key positions, there is a ton of exposure and there's a ton of focus. And, the Raider Nation is always excited about seeing the possibility of Raider football in any capacity, whether it's practice, preseason games, or regular season games. So the fans are going to turn out. That's added pressure for these guys. That's why I say, to these young men when I talk to them, the best thing you can do is be available, take care of your mind, your body. And there's going to be times where, it would be better to go put your face in that playbook or go study some film than it would be to go out and have a couple brewskis after practice.
All right, coming up next, we're going to be talking about MALCOM KOONCE. He's officially returned from obviously that injury that he was nursing, and he also signed that 1-year deal. So we're going to be getting into that in the next segment. So keep it locked on here on the Raiders Squad Show. You're watching or listening to the Locked On Network. Ever wish managing your money felt easier? With Monarch Money, it can. Whether you're growing your savings or planning a big purchase, Monarch puts you in the driver's seat. It's like having your own personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money is more than a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So in addition to managing your money, you're also building wealth. And one thing that kind of surprised me when I started tracking my money with Monarch was that all my subscriptions that I have on my phone, I realized I was spending way too much. I didn't even know I had some of these subscriptions. So that's why Monarch Money is great, because you can see everything that you're spending on. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDON for half of your first year. All right, Raider Nation, I think we have to talk about MALCOM KOONCE, and I waited until training camp to talk about this because I think this is probably one of the most interesting storylines, because we know the year he had before, he had that serious injury of his ACL, missed the entire 2024 season, and the Raiders kind of still gave him a decent deal. It's a 1-year deal. It's kind of a prove-it deal, but nonetheless, I feel like this is a very big year for MALCOM KOONCE because everyone's kind of banking on the year that he had that was very, very successful. Link, we'll go with you first. When you're on a deal like that and it's kind of a prove it deal because it's a 1-year deal, you're coming off injury. What's the mindset like as a player heading into that deal? And do you also feel like the Raiders defense is really banking on him being that guy?
Well, I know the Raiders defense is banking on him to be that guy. They need somebody from the other side, opposite of Max Crosby, to create that pressure on the quarterback and do it quickly. And MALCOM KOONCE, before he went down with the injury, had a breakout season. He was doing everything right. He was overshadowing Tyree Wilson. He played way above, what people expected, like I did. The original third-round picker out of 21 out of the University of Buffalo. I know the Raiders went back to Buffalo because they thought they might going to get another Khalil Mack, but it hasn't come to fruition just like that. As of late, because of the injury, but it was on its way. MALCOM KOONCE was finding a way to be better. His size, his length, his speed. He was finding a way to apply that on opposing tackles and to be able to generate that pressure. And the untimely injury really canceled the season last year. So this is a prove-it year. He's got a lot to prove, not only to Pete Carroll for giving him another chance on this prove-it contract, also to himself. Yep. And what I've always told the guys in the locker room, look, no matter where you stand on the depth chart, there are 31 other teams in the league that need players. And you being here shows that you have the ability to be here. So come out of the injury, come out of the funk. Hopefully he doesn't play too much on his mental capacity, because I've seen guys who suffered injuries like this. still have it stuck in their head when they're trying to do things. That can affect them. So I'm hoping that's not the case. But this is a great opportunity for Malcolm, and I expect high things from him this season.
Yeah, no, I do as well. I'm excited about seeing what he's able to do. I mean, think about it. The success he had in 2023 wasn't even the full season. It was half the season. He had 8 sacks and 3 forced fumbles in 9 games, right? And so he's always been that guy in limited reps. He's always been able to make the most out of it. But at one point in his career, it kind of seemed like he was in the doghouse. He wasn't anywhere existing. And then Antonio Pierce gave him an opportunity to just go out there and let it rip and be him once he took over as an interim. And you saw what he did. I was excited about his 2024 potential. He was going into the last year of his deal. He had an opportunity to really sign a big deal if he could build off what he did, and then obviously tears the ACL. He's back. The Raiders believe he could be that guy across from Max Crosby, but he's got to go out there and prove it. He's got to show that in the second half of 2023 wasn't just a one stretch in his career, that he could do this consistently. But he's got the opportunity. He's got Patrick Graham, defensive coordinator. He's back again with that continuity. Obviously, he knows Max. He knows Robbie Leonard, the defensive line coach, who I believe is very underrated as a coach in this league. I think Robbie Leonard is one of the better defensive line coaches. So he has that opportunity to go out there and show up and show out. He can go and ball out this year and have a fantastic season, help the Raiders win some games and get double-digit sacks and some forced fumbles. He can end up going to free agency, signing a big lucrative deal somewhere else, or he can turn that into a nice lucrative deal with the silver and black, whatever he has. But everything is right in front of him right now. So even though he missed the 2024 season, it was a blessing that he went down at least at the end of preseason. So he had the whole year to rehab. And Lincoln's right. The biggest deal will be just the mental side of things. Does he have the confidence that, hey, my leg is good, my knee is good, my ACL is fine, I don't have anything to worry about? It's more mental the second year as opposed to the physical part, which is the first year trying to rehab. So we'll see how Malcolm Koonce looks. But just talking to him earlier this offseason during OTAs and mandatory minicamp, he sounded the part. Now we'll get an opportunity to see if he can be the part.
And there's another part of this, guys. What we always realize and recognize in the locker room: fresh legs. Fresh legs from a stud. Fresh legs. He's been off a season. He's just been working out. So fresh legs. He comes back hungry. It's going to be a fun time. Chantel, I think your mic is mute.
Yeah,
but perfect. That might happen a couple times on this.
I was like, wait, it wasn't me. I thought it was me. I was looking around. I thought I was getting. I was like, man, what are we doing?
I was too excited. I just wanted to talk about Malcolm Koonce because I was going to say when they drafted Tyree Wilson, everyone was like, okay, he's going to be on the other side of Max and he's going to be that guy. And then Malcolm Koonce comes out of nowhere. And I also want to mention he also had 3 forced fumbles during that short stint, right? And Pete Carroll's all about takeaways. If Malcolm Koonce can be even close to maybe 90% of what he was that season, how do you think that's going to help elevate the defense? And what will that even do for a guy like Max Crosby?
It's going to add to the rotation.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. If Tyree Wilson is starting to come into his own, much like Malcolm Koonce was in his time of the career, third year, stuff like that, and you have Malcolm Koonce and you have Max Crosby, you've got a fierce pass rush right there. And if you're Patrick Graham and you want to install a NASCAR package, that possibly, you have unlimited options that you can do. You can generate pressure on these passing teams, and I think it's a great thing.
No, I do as well. And again, Tyree Wilson has a lot to prove this year. I mean, he's going into year 3. He's a former first-round pick. He knows that, the first couple seasons weren't exactly what he wanted, but you see glimpses of it. He's got to find a way to take advantage of the C word and be that C word, and that's consistency. Can he be consistent? Can he be that guy that can provide, a real threat across from Max? Can you move him inside in that NASCAR package? Can he be a guy that's not only good against the pass, but also stout against the run, right? I mean, can he be that total package? He was a dominant force at Texas Tech, but as we all know, Texas Tech and college is a lot different than the animal that is the NFL. So he's got a lot to prove. He's said it. He's acknowledged it. He's been working hard. So we'll see. And if these guys all pop, and I know that's a big if, but they have so much talent that this defensive line could be really nasty and have a really good rotation and always have guys that have fresh legs, like Lincoln mentioned, if they're able to really pick it up and get after it. And if the defensive line is really good, the secondary that we question because it's a little bit young and maybe inexperienced is going to be that much better because the D-line is doing their job as well.
Here's a little added point, guys. And I was doing some research and some film study, and I've only seen sparks of it out of Patrick Graham's defense. There's a defensive style that we call Joker. Joker consists of when you have 3 down defensive linemen. So imagine Tyree Wilson, where Max Crosby plays. Let's imagine Adam Butler, nose guard. Let's imagine MALCOM KOONCE, on the other side, the left side, over the left tackle. And then you have a walking around Max Crosby that can walk in gaps, either line outside, line up inside, shoot another gap, do a game with the nose tackle and stuff like that, or do a game, with some of the two-man, three-man game. The reason why I say that is because there's been a lot of times that I experienced in my career having to play against a guy where you have to take notice of where he is. And it forces the offensive line to have to further communicate and offensive coordinators to further have to plan. This is just an idea and just a suggestion as far as generating pass rush and confusing offensive linemen that might be on the field, especially if Allegiant Stadium is loud and they can't hear. This can be an added advantage for the Raiders. So this is a big deal to have him back.
Now, you talked about fresh legs, but there's also the other aspect of it because you're not in game, you don't got pads on, you're not getting hit. Like, what's that kind of like in terms of how your body's going to have to adjust to that after a long period of time of not being in game? Do you feel like that's a little bit of an adjustment? Q, we'll go with you first.
I mean, it's just all about getting calloused up and getting ready for the season. I mean, that's just what it is. I mean, you can't play football without playing football, right? You're not going to get better at football without actually playing it. So right now, these guys are probably going to be the healthiest and freshest that they're going to be throughout the course of the year. And they've got to take advantage of it. And the thing about it is that's why it's so important that they have a really big training camp, have a big preseason, and come out the gates and be ready to go. Week 1, don't use the first 4 weeks of the season as the preseason because right now they're fresh. Right. And so if they can have a tough training camp like Pete Carroll's talking about, if they can have a really productive preseason, put together this 53-man roster and ready to hit the ground running, they can, like I said, surprise some folks coming out the gates and maybe steal a couple victories early in the season that they might not, be in line to take in the middle of the season when every team is kind of all right. Now they're in midseason form. If they can come out of the gates and be as close to midseason form as possible, they've got an opportunity to really, go from 8 or 9 wins to maybe stealing that 10th win and maybe even that 11th win and finding a way to get into the playoffs. It's all about being fresh right now, putting your craft to your test and coming out as strong as possible.
There was a drill back in the day we called 9-on-7. Most teams define it as team run right now. And you're not playing with a complete offense or complete defense, but it's run offense versus run defense. I would suspect if Pete Carroll wants to make this a highly competitive camp, that the first couple of padded practices, you're adding a little bit more time to team run or 9-on-7 drill. And you're getting that work in. You're getting that full speed where you go, guys. You have guys that would thud the back or the ball carrier. You're not tackling, but you get around guys around the football, and offensive line's got to do a good job of blocking. That's where the tight ends and the offensive line work together. It's a great opportunity for fresh legs like MALCOM KOONCE to take a few extra snaps there, get himself acclimated to having a big 300-pound offensive lineman pounded on him, or having to defend against a tight end and stuff like that. And then on top of that, you add one-on-one. Offensive line versus defensive line, one-on-one. Do a few more extra reps than that. These are ways that you pattern yourself into getting into football shape without it. And you're working your way up into those competitive practices the Raiders are going to have against the 49ers in future in training camp.
There's no doubt, Lincoln, there's the thing that, I get fired up and it kind of goes to what you just said is even the last day of mandatory minicamp, how it traditionally is. The last day of mandatory minicamp, normally most coaches just say, hey, all right, we had a really good offseason. We had good OTAs. Everyone go ahead and get an early vacation. They did their mandatory minicamp. They did that third day, and they even went to, as Pete Carroll called it, overtime. Right? Well, At the end of the 4 quarters, the game was still tied. So the commissioner came down and said that we needed to go overtime. So again, he's not shied away from the time that he was in Seattle when there would be times where they say, well, the Seahawks are going to get docked a practice because they're doing a little bit too much in practice. He never shied away from that. He's talked about that. He said that's happened to us multiple times in Seattle. They get after it. And so everything that you just said that they're going to do a lot of to work those fresh legs and get them in midseason form, I believe that we're going to see a lot of that coming up during training camp.
By the way, Q, I hate that rule. It's one of the reasons why I left the game when I did. When the CBA passed that rule, I knew why they were doing it to try to protect players. But here's the thing. You're paying these guys outlandish sides of money, and I'm getting off a little sidetrack here. You're paying these guys enormous sums of money, right?
Yep.
And their craft, their job is to play football. It's not like they were in college. I can understand the 20-hour rule in college.
Right.
You got to go to class. No, this is your job. What else are you supposed to be doing?
Right.
What else do you have to do? They
Right.
find coaches. They find teams. If Chantel comes up to me and says, Coach, I just want to get better. Can you help me out with a pass rush moves? If it's filmed and turned into the NFLPA, we get fined.
Right.
I'm your coach. You're my player. I'm trying to make you better. But that rule always has been a chap in my hide, because even coaches that want it, that players that want it, that teams that need it can't get better because they had to adhere to those, this is as many practices as we can have. And that's why training camp isn't the same. You know, when I remember there was one year where they only had training camp for 11 days. How do you get in football shape in 11 days?
Right.
And you're not even for every day they hit in full pads, the next day they have to have off.
Yep.
What?
Right.
No, we're not talking about game situation. We're talking about practice. But these rules have got to be a little bit more flexible for these teams to be better. And I understand the NFL wants to keep its product on the football field. And I'm sorry for going off on this little side tangent, but there are things that you have to do where you have to get these guys prepared to play. You can only do that by playing football.
Facts.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, I like that tangent that you went on, because I mean, for some people might not know that you might get fined for that, right? So that you make a good point there.
And also doc practices too.
Yeah. And I mean, if you're trying to get better, that's probably not the best route. I want to ask you guys one more question about MALCOM KOONCE. What would be a successful season for him? Because I feel like a lot of people want him to duplicate what he did in that first year, his breakout season. But if he's not able to duplicate it, we don't have to be negative. But what would be a success story for him this season?
I mean, honestly, I think that, I hate to put a number on it, but I mean, the guy had 8 sacks in 9 games. I think that he's looking at double-digit sacks, right? I mean, if he wants to be the Batman or the Robin to Max Crosby's Batman, I think both of those guys are double-digit sacks in 2025, right? I mean, that's ideal. That's what the Raiders have not had for the longest. They haven't had a true number 2 running alongside, Max. And then on top of that, what he does really well is those forced fumbles. You mentioned it. I mentioned he had 3 forced fumbles, and that's a big deal. Not just sacking the quarterback, but sacking the ball, giving his team an opportunity to create that turnover, get the ball back in really good position. He did that in a short amount of time. So if he's able to capitalize on that, if he's able to build off what he did at the end of 2023, and I know it's a year removed now, then that can only be good for him. But he really came on strong. He's a guy that is really quick off the snap, and he's able to get back to the quarterback. If he could be that disruptive from one side and Mad Max could come in from the other side, only good things could happen for the Raiders. They obviously need that penetration from the defensive tackle position.
I would put a number on it. I will put a number on it. I want 5 forced turnovers, 5 forced fumbles, and I want 6 quarterback sacks. And the only reason I'm saying 6 quarterback sacks is kind of a low number for what he achieved when he was healthy, because a lot of quarterbacks focus on number 98. And a lot of quarterbacks are right-handed. So they're looking down at their right side where 98 is coming from. This is a great opportunity, much like MALCOM KOONCE had before, when a quarterback is putting back that arm to strip that ball to cause that turnover. That would be huge. If this Raiders defense, which is not notoriously known for getting turnovers these days, if they can find a way to generate more turnovers and put themselves in the top 5 and the top 10 teams as far as turnovers gained, I think this can be a very successful season with this defense. I really do. And then the way it's coming together, I really do. I know the offense is still work in progress, so I don't know if they're going to score enough points to be able to keep them. But if this defense can play the way and turn over the ball, give the offense a short field, give them a better chance of winning a lot more games than we originally projected.
Got to create turnovers. Create turnovers. I'm telling you, I will turn blue screaming at the TV about the turnovers that they need to create, and they just don't do it. But I know Pete Carroll, that's an emphasis of his, so I do expect to see an uptick of that this year.
I know people are saying that it's not going to be the same defense as last year, obviously, because I love the defense last year, but I'm liking the moves they're making. They brought in Jamal Adams, MALCOM KOONCE is back, so I feel like there's a lot to look forward to. Also, we talked about that veteran group of linebackers that the Raiders have as well, so very interesting to see how this defense will look like, and we're going to talk about that more in the next segment, because we're going to be talking about Jakorian Bennett, and we'll ask you, and obviously we're going to be asking Q and Link as well, what he needs to do to be a starter on this Raiders defense. That's coming up next in the next segment. You're listening to the Raiders Squad Show on the Locked On Network. Guys, you probably heard of Viagra or Cialis. Maybe you've even tried them. But if you're looking for something beyond the usual pill, it's time to meet Rugiet Ready. Rugiet Ready is a next-gen prescription treatment designed to amplify arousal in the brain and boost blood flow. Unlike the usual pills that can take hours, Rugiet's 3-in-1 formula dissolves under your tongue and kicks in fast. on an average in 15 minutes. Effects can last up to 36 hours, so you can stay confident and in control when the moment is right. And you can even read all the real customer reviews on their site. It's helping a lot of people feel more confident and present in the moment. Head to Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code LockedOnNFL to get 15% off today. That's Rugiet.com/LockedOnNFL and use the promo code LockedOnNFL for 15% off. Individual results may vary with prescription treatment. Compounded drugs are permitted to be prescribed under federal law, but are not FDA approved and do not undergo FDA safety, effectiveness, or manufacturing review. Please visit the Rugiet website for full safety information. Welcome back, Raider Nation. We've been talking about the defense, and we talked about even the secondary a little bit earlier when we talked about Jamal Adams being picked up. And we've been through talking about the secondary a lot because I feel like there's a lot of questions now. Some are kind of getting answered. But for a guy like Jakorian Bennett, who I feel like there is a ceiling that hasn't been met yet, there was talk that he could even possibly be a starter. What are your guys' thoughts on that? Q, we'll go with you first. What are you hearing about Jakorian Bennett? And do you think he has an opportunity to be a starter?
I mean, he does. He absolutely has an opportunity. And we saw what he was able to do last year before he went down and was on IR and the season was wrapped up. I mean, the guy was one of the better DBs, not only on the squad, but he was one of the better DBs in the league. He had a lot of pass breakups. He had, I think, 8 PBUs. He didn't have any interceptions, something that he's been working on, but he did have 8 PBUs, and he was really getting it done on the money down, which is third down, right? When you know that the ball's coming your way, when they've got to have it on the other side of the ball, and and you're able to lock in and break up the ball. That's great, but, he's got to stay healthy. That's been an issue that he's had so far throughout the course of his career, right? I mean, you can't make the club in the tub. It's simple. It sounds funny and exciting, but or whatever, it's cute, but that's the reality of it. You can't make the club in the tub. And on top of that, he's going to have to work, I think, even extra hard to prove who he is to this staff. If you look at his size, if you look at, just his measurables, it's not the same as the prototypical Pete Carroll style defensive back, the long, lengthy guys that we saw in Seattle, the Legion of Boom. So, in OTAs, mandatory minicamp, we saw him running with the twos. I don't take a whole lot of that right now, but I mean, starting with today's practice, right? He's going to have an opportunity to go out there and earn that spot. We've talked about the secondary a lot and who's going to be the starting corners, the outside guys, the nickel guy, right? Who's going to be that? It's up for grabs right now. It's up to JB to go out there and do it, and then stay healthy and hold on to that spot. But I think I know he has the ability to get it done. He's just got to go get it done.
Yeah, he's shown a great deal of improvement in anticipating the route running. And as much to Q's point, the pass breakups were obvious. And he's good at anticipating that, which is a knack that a lot of DBs need, especially in this level, because everything happens so fast. Don't always have it, but you definitely need it. Now, the advancement is trying to project where he can go from here. I think the sky's the limit, but you got to be available. Yep. You got to find a way to manage your body to where you're available. You can go out there and be effective when the team's counting on you. So yes, he has potential to be a starter, but can you rely on him? And that's what has yet to be defined for when it comes to Jakorian Bennett, in my opinion.
Yeah, and I feel like you guys mentioned it, like he has improved a lot, and you talk about the pass breakups, but also the confidence that he's going into this training camp. A guy like Pete Carroll has been able to develop corners, and we've seen that throughout history. Like that's a fact. What do you think Pete Carroll's impact on a guy like Jakorian Bennett can be?
Oh, huge. I mean, that's the one thing that he's so good at doing. And I don't know if this is something that every coach is great at doing, but everybody that I've talked to has given Pete Carroll a lot of credit for this, is being able to instill confidence in young guys, right? And even Geno Smith, who wasn't necessarily young when he arrived in Seattle, he was just young as far as how much play he's had in the league. He instilled confidence in him, even when he made a mistake, that, hey, that's not something to dwell on. Move on. He's had a lot of success with younger players. He's had a lot of success with guys that, may have been written off by others, and then they're able to arrive with him, and he's able to get the most out of them. I think that he's going to instill a lot of confidence in Jakorian Bennett. I think he's going to instill a lot of confidence in Eric Stokes, DeCam Richardson, Darian Porter. I think all those guys, especially because that's Pete Carroll's position. That's what he coaches. That's what he played. I mean, that's his thing. He's there in camp and he's doing DB drills. He's doing, backpedal drills. He's showing. He's not just telling. He's showing how to do it. And so I think that helps in a major way. JB, to his point, his credit, he even got bigger. You can see that he muscled up. He rocked up a little bit more. So he can be in better shape, so he's not getting those nicks and bruises, so he is available. I think that there's, as Lincoln says, sky's the limit for him and all these DBs because they all have ability and they're relatively young. It's not like there's a guy that's out there that he's on his last legs and, well, let's see what else he's got left in him. These guys are young. They can go out there and they can really make an impact. They just got to pick up the scheme. They got to stay healthy. And if they get beat, because they'll get beat and they'll have a bad play, you got to clear it, man. You can't dwell on that. You got to just let that thing go.
Q and Chantel, since USC and Seattle, I have never heard a player make a negative statement about Pete Carroll. Now, I've heard people be critical of the way he might have handled the Russell Wilson situation in Seattle, but overall, players love to play for him. When you have that ability to be what we call a player's coach, you draw out a little bit extra out of guys. And if in this case, because Jakorian Bennett can relate to a guy who played defensive back, then it might make him a better player. It might instill more of that confidence to do. And I think the sky's the limit, as I said before, for Jakorian Bennett, but he has to be available. So he has to find a way to stay healthy. So there's a great opportunity to have a coach who knows how to relate because they played the position, but it also instills more confidence, makes you really want to go out there and try. And when I saw from Jakorian Bennett in the OTAs and the minicamp, the handful of spots, he was soaking up everything that was being coached to him. Yep. I mean, he was really soaking it up, listening, and trying to apply it. And this defense plays at a very high, fast level with a lot of confidence. I know he wants to add to that.
And don't count out those Maryland guys. You can never count out those Maryland guys, man. They come with a little bit more edge. I talk about Iowa State players all the time, but those Maryland guys, a lot of times they're the dudes that may have got, under-recruited. They get overlooked a little bit, and they get to Maryland, and they get in that program, man, and they're able to ball out. So the Raiders have a couple of those guys in Jakorian Bennett and also DJ Glaze, and both guys have an opportunity to be really good Raiders.
And the interesting part is he's probably going to be battling against Darian Porter for possibly that starting position. Now, that's a battle to definitely look out for during training camp. And for Jakorian Bennett, when you have a rookie coming in and he's getting a lot of hype and people are thinking, hey, he might be the starting guy, but you've been there, you've kind of dealt with injuries, you've kind of grown. How much more motivation do you think that kind of puts in his back? Link, we'll go with you first.
Oh, if you're not motivated, you're not a player. Right. I mean, you got to be motivated. I mean, there's no doubt. If somebody is nipping at your heels, the team goes out and drafts somebody the same position that you play, and he might get a few snaps when you're on the sideline. Oh, you've got to be motivated, or there's really no reason to play. If you can't rise up to the competition level, if you can't take the pressure of always being a focal point, no matter who's on the team, you don't deserve to be on the team.
Facts, big facts. Look, the fact that he was running with the twos in OTAs and mandatory minicamp should be all the motivation you need. Should be all the motivation you need. That's letting you know nothing is going to be given. He had Eric Stokes and Darian Porter running in front of him, right? They were on the outside corners during OTAs and mandatory minicamp. So if I'm that guy, I'm working my tail off, and I'm knowing that, hey, once we hit training camp, once we hit that field, once we hit that grass, it is on. And I'm going to go out there and put everything I got, leave it out at the field, and do exactly what my head coach says, which is compete. Always compete. The sticker's right there above the door when they walk into the facility each and every day. And that's what's in my mind. Every time I hit the grass is I'm going out there competing. I'm putting my best foot forward, and I'm forcing this staff to make me a starter.
Yeah, I think it was in minicamp where he picked up Aiden O'Connell, and they got that on cam. And, I think that was really good for him in terms of confidence because he was running with that second group. But I will say, with the moves that they're kind of making and the guys that they brought in, do you guys have a little bit more confidence in this secondary group? Link, we'll go with you first.
It's coming together. It really is. It's coming together. Again, we talked about this morning availability. So the guys that have been injured and availability, and the newcomers that have experience. Even the rookie, coming in with all the expectations. So there's a lot of things that are circling over the play of these guys collectively. Now it's going to come together. If they can generate pressure to quarterback, you're going to force the quarterback to get the ball out early. And if corners can anticipate routes, there's an opportunity for turnovers. There are all things that work together. But this secondary has a chance with some of the additions to be good, to be able to play Patrick Graham's defense, and more importantly, be able to take away a lot of what opposing offenses can do.
Exactly. I mean, I think that this secondary could be really good, but it's going to be a wait and see because there's so much unknown, right? I mean, even going back to Eric Stokes, this is a former first-round pick. He was really good in Green Bay, but injuries, right? Again, going back to availability, it always comes back to availability. Your best ability is availability. Stokes, that's been the story of his career. DK Richardson, I think he's in a really good position. He's got the length, he's got the speed, he fits exactly what Pete Carroll and company want to do. He just has to get better from what he did last year, but at least he had a lot of football reps. You can't get better at football unless you're playing football. He had that opportunity. So I think he's a guy that nobody's really talking about that could end up being the guy that we are talking about once training camp and the preseason's over. Like, hey, man, don't get caught slipping on that guy. The second-year dude could really play. But there's a lot of different options out there. That secondary and that battle that they have in camp is going to be a good one to pay attention to as well.
Yeah, I think that's the number one battle that I'm focused and locked in on for training camp. I will say this, though. I feel like it is coming together, like Link said, and we're only going to find out when they hit the field, because I feel like you can practice all you want, but we're going to find out when they actually hit the field. And also another group that we should be looking into, and we will in the next segment, is the running back group. Of course, Ashton Jeanty is the big name. We're going to talk about him, but there's some other guys that might, kind of surprise you this season. So we'll get into that in the next segment. All right, fantasy football is back. Fire up the group chat and get your draft board ready and buckle up for a season filled with breakout busts and all the overreactions we live for. It's all going down on Yahoo Fantasy. This year, me and a couple of my friends are playing on Yahoo Fantasy, and you should know too, whether if you're a first timer or a veteran making your millionth league. And honestly, like, things can get a little bit crazy during fantasy. You want to make some trades, you don't want to make some trades, but the Yahoo app is actually the best because it gives you all the information. It's really easy to use. And to celebrate 28 years of fantasy greatness, Yahoo Fantasy is dropping 28 big new features over 28 days, giving you more ways to play, more ways to draft, and more ways to win. It all begins August 4th. So stay tuned and get started in creating or joining a fantasy football league at yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. That's yahoofantasy.com/LockedOnNFL. And let's make this fantasy season the best one yet. All right, guys. So one guy I'm probably going to be picking up or trying to pick up in Yahoo Fantasy this year is Ashton Jeanty. Like, let's be serious here. That's what I'm going to try to do, right?
You are not alone.
That is going out on a limb there, man.
He might be my first pick. I don't know. But I feel like the Raiders running back group, they have a bunch of eyes on them because of Ashton Jeanty, and he's also good in the pass game as well. But when you take a look at this group, obviously Ashton Jeanty is the big name, and there's a lot of expectations for him. But let's start off by talking about those expectations, because you're coming in. There's a lot of talk that you're going to, I don't want to say revamp the offense, but you're going to add a lot to this offense, right? And you're going to be a big option. So Q, what are you hearing from, being in the building on anything about Ashton Jeanty and what they've seen from him so far and what they've liked from him?
I mean, they like what they saw early in the offseason. I mean, they're jacked up about, to use Pete Carroll's words, they're jacked up about what he can do, right? But again, as Pete said to us yesterday, these guys are all young. Now they've got to go ahead and build off of it. They got to be ready right now. They've got to be on, right? They've got to be on right away and come out and hit the ground running. I think he'll be fine. I think Ashton Jeanty will be really good. The question is, all right, where's everyone else in the pecking order, right? Raheem Mostert, the old veteran there, who is a touchdown machine. That guy is someone to get excited about. I see those two guys being very complimentary of each other on the football field. And then behind them, with Sincere McCormick and Zamir White, how does that pecking order really play out? But yeah, all signs of her go with Ashton Jeanty. They're so fired up about what he could bring to the table, not just in the running back, just catching or getting the ball, just hand putting in his belly, but also catching the ball in the backfield. Like, this is something that he can do as well. And if you go back to not last year at Boise State, but the year before, he caught a lot of passes out of the backfield. So I mean, if you're picking up Ashton Jeanty in fantasy, trust and believe he's going to get a lot of work each and every week.
I think Genty's going to be good. I think he's going to be valuable, but I also believe that's going to be running back by committee in this room. We saw a lot of running backs come through the doors last year, and especially towards the end of the year when McCormick sort of made a name for himself by being invaluable. Now, I don't know what happened with Zamir White, and I call him Zeus because he's built like a god. But but I'm waiting to see. I'm waiting to see what he can do. Because I think he's
the scheme, right? Didn't it feel like the scheme didn't fit with what he does?
Very true. And that's the thing that has to be pointed out, because there are times where offensive coordinators will take parts of schemes that guys did well in college, show that they showcase, and might not necessarily transfer to what we do. More importantly, there are times I've seen guys that are able to run from an I-back, having a fullback in front of them, run better than being in a one-back shotgun set. There are a lot of intangibles that we can talk about during the season. But Ashton Jeanty, they have high expectations. Whenever you draft a guy in the first round in the top 10, you have expectations for him to be an immediate impact player. There's going to be a running back room. And I don't know whatever happened with Raheem Mostert in his career. I thought he was valuable in San Francisco, thought he was valuable in Miami, and somehow he finds up to be on the Raiders. But he is, much to Q's point, a touchdown machine, a short yardage guy that they can get you those hard-earned yards and stuff like that. And it'll be yet to be seen if Ashton Jeanty can do it up against those multiple 300-pound defensive fronts that you're going to see in the National Football League when it comes to short yardage and goal line production.
Yeah, Mostert in Miami last year was just injured. I mean, that was his thing. He just wasn't able to be on the field very much. But, man, the year before that, he is a guy that will find the end zone early and often. I remember asking him during OTAs, what is it about you and finding the end zone? Why is it something that's kind of like your thing? And he said it's all about the physicality. It's all about the physicality, right? And so, obviously, that goes back to what? All roads lead back to the offensive line. Right, if you get down there in the red zone, you get down there near the goal line, and everyone in the building knows what you want to do, you've got to be able to execute that when everyone knows. When everybody in Allegiant Stadium knows that, okay, number 2 is about to get the ball, or Moster is about to get the ball, and they're still going to punch it into the end zone, how are they going to do that? It's the big guys up front, right? The physicality's got to be there. That offensive line's got to come together, one band, one sound, and get those guys into the end zone. It's just, it's really simple, but we know it's not simple.
14 blast was my favorite play. Run it over the right tackle, right guard. 14 blast downhill. ISO blast. Let's do it. Let's go.
I think obviously Jeanty's going to be used as a workhorse, but Mostert, I feel like they can use him in those red zone situations, and that's what he's going to be key for. And, you talked about the injuries that he kind of dealt with in Miami, but I believe he's going to be the second running back that they're going to be counting on. I think the more interesting conversation is going to be the battle between McCormick and Zamir White.
Bingo.
Because that's the most interesting for me. And I feel like Zamir White, people are not talking about him enough, but I think he's a good back. What are your guys' thoughts on that battle between McCormick and Zamir White? Q, will go with you first.
Yeah, this is a very intriguing one. I actually talked about it today on the Locked On Raiders podcast, one of my camp battles that I wanted to focus in on, because Sincere McCormick, the young man out of UTSA, who if you go to San Antonio, he eats for free everywhere. I mean, that guy, they love him there. He was fantastic. The problem is, again, with a lot of these conversations we've had so far, is injuries. He had an opportunity last year, and, man, he started to open up some eyes. He earned more reps. Everyone got excited. Boom. Then he got injured and he was done for the season, right? And so he is a guy that definitely can get it done. He's hung around the Raiders for some years now for a reason. They see the ability in him. It doesn't matter who the staff is. They see what he has. They saw what he had in college. He just has to make sure he stays on the field. Zamir White, to Lincoln's credit, last year, he came in, he was bigger than he was the year before, had an opportunity to take over as the lead back with Josh Jacobs going to Green Bay. And for one reason or the other, it just didn't work. I think the scheme was a big part of it. I don't think he was that comfortable. There was no kind of threat at the quarterback position, so anyone can stack the box and make sure that the Raiders weren't able to run on him. There was a lot of different reasons for the failure of the run game, but when you're 32nd across the board in every category, you didn't have a very good season on the ground. So I do think that competition is going to be interesting, because both those backs have big-time skill sets that they could show, but can Sincere stay healthy? And will this scheme under Chip Kelly, will it fit with what Zamir White does?
First things first, the offensive line wasn't very good unanimously, in my opinion, last year. That hurt the running game. Second thing is there's only one football. There's only one guy who's going to get a shot to be seen in practice and stuff like that at a time. Third thing is I think it's highly unlikely to go into the season and think that their Raiders are going to keep 4 running backs on the active roster, because they have too many holes and too many places they have to fill on another position. With that being the case, who do you put down the practice squad? Because I think one of these guys will be kept on practice squad. And for how long? I think all 4 of these backs are valuable. And there will probably be GMs from other teams that are salivating if they see a Zamir White on a practice squad, or what you saw flashes out of Sincere McCormick on a practice squad, and be able to take them. So there's a lot of intangibles that fit in. But again, it goes back to the fact you can't put the carriage in front of the horse. I have to see how this offensive line does before I can sort of manage what type of run game the Raiders, if anything, they're going to have when it comes to the season. And more importantly, how often are these running backs going to get a chance to be seen? with that starting offensive line because there's not a lot of depth. It's coming together. So even if you have the 2s and the 3s in there for the preseason, how much can you take out of what you see on that football field from this guy? It's going to be a lot of wait and see, unfortunately.
And Zamir White, he was a stud at Georgia.
Yes, he was.
An absolute stud. And I think they used him in a particular way. But I will say that a lot of people are projecting that Zamir is going to be the one to probably get cut during this training camp. Your guys' thoughts, would you be surprised if he was cut and they kept McCormick instead?
I don't think I'd be surprised by either move. I don't either one of the guys, because Lincoln's spot on. I mean, I don't see them keeping 4 running backs, and you also have to factor in that Dylan Lobby's still on the roster too, right? I mean, what do you do with him? I think he could be a special teams ace, but I thought that last year and we didn't see it. So, that's an intriguing element to this as well. Again, it's going to come down to availability and fit. Right. If that offensive line is able to open up some holes, Zamir White can end up being a really good running back. I have a lot of confidence that he could be that guy. We saw him in glimpses, right, when he filled in for Josh Jacobs, but we haven't seen it consistently. Sincere McCormick, we saw it in a small handful of games, but we didn't see it consistently, right? It all goes back to the O-line. It all goes back to consistency. Who's giving this team the best opportunity to win? So at the end of the day, we're talking about probably the 3rd running back on the roster. So I think it'll all work itself out in the wash. So if one of those guys ends up on the practice squad, like Lincoln says, I wouldn't be surprised. If one of those guys ends up not even on the roster, I also wouldn't be surprised, just because, again, I believe this roster is going to get turned over quite a bit with all the competition that you're going to see through training camp and preseason.
No doubt.
Yeah, and we actually got a comment right here, which was kind of interesting. This is a great running room, and Pete knows how to take advantage of a running room. The way that he used Marshawn Lynch in Seattle, I feel like that's going to be kind of similar to how he wants to use a guy like Ashton Jeanty, obviously a little bit more in the pass game. But this battle is going to be one of the most interesting ones in camp. And you kind of hope that a guy like Zamir, I'm kind of rooting for a guy like Zamir White, but I think we kind of know how that might end up going. I will say this, though. I feel like for a guy like McCormick, there's a little bit more hype on him than Zamir. And do you guys feel like that's warranted? Because, I mean, we have seen some highlights from him where you're kind of like intrigued and want to see a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that the hype is there because we saw it last year. We saw McCormick play well, where we saw Zamir White struggle. We see him really become like an afterthought, right? I mean, you didn't have him. You had Amir Abdullah out there getting more carries than you had from Zamir White, right? So, I mean, at some point, it just seemed like Zamir White was an afterthought. And then Sincere McCormick comes in. He's got this running style. He's running strong. He's picking up, tough yards. And you can get behind that. A strong run game, as Lincoln knows, gets everyone fired up. It gets the offensive line fired up. It gets the running back. It gets the fans fired up. If a running back is running strong, like beast mode, for example, when you see those braids and you see them, those dreads kind of shaking and nobody being able to take them down and the pile being moved on, that gets you juiced up as a football fan in general. So I think that the hype for McCormick is there. But again, going back to UTSA, it always ends up coming down to availability. He gets injured quite a bit, so he's got to, get rid of the injury bug. If he can, he could definitely make the squad and be a big factor.
I've once heard you're only as good as your last time being seen, as the last time being out. And for Zamir White, a lot of times it was negative yards. It wasn't getting anything done, being productive versus some of the other guys. And that's what stands out in people's minds. So that's when, if you're trying to imagine a depth chart, that's why Zamir White falls on the bottom of it, because he hasn't done as much recently as he did. Now, Chantel, you mentioned Georgia. Absolutely, he was a stud in Georgia. And I know a lot of people who are football fans that are high on him. And like I said, I think he's built like a Greek god. But he has to find a system. They have to create a system that is conducive. Now, you don't, as an offensive coordinator, you don't have a string of plays where you're sitting there looking down, well, Sincere McCormick runs this one better than Ashton Jeanty or vice versa. If you do, that's extremely meticulous. And I don't know many offensive coordinators, if any, that do that.
Right.
But I will say it behooves them to go back and see what these guys have done well at their time in college when they were productive and see if you can implement that into their offense. And that's why I think the best style of coaching is a coach that can create a system that best utilizes the players that he has. If this offensive line does this job and blocks the front seven, now you leave it on the running back to find the right hole, to hit the hole and accelerate and put damage on that secondary. Make those people force not want to come up and tackle you like you see so many of the running backs that are able to do, or be able to escape in space. That is what a great running back does. And that's what we're trying to see. If either of these four guys have that potential, you're only good as your last time out. They have shown in times. That's the reason why they're playing in this level. Now they have to show it with the Raiders.
Yeah, and I will say this, and I think you'll like this one. Like, it all comes down to the O-line.
Absolutely.
Right? So if
you already know.
Yeah, so if they're serving up pancakes, right, this running back group should be definitely elite. And so that's kind of what I'm hoping. Also, because I've said this before, but Jeanty's never had JPJ, a guy like JPJ on that O-line. So this is going to be interesting. We'll see how these battles continue during training camp. We're going to get into all of that. Q, you're going to be very close there at training camp. You're going to be in the building. And I know last time we kind of mentioned it quickly. What's the food like? Like, what are they serving you with over there? Tell us a little bit about the vibe.
There's no food right now, right? I'm in the media room. They've got some snacks. They do got the coffee machine out, but I'm a water type guy, so I'm not really worried about that. But I do got my ice cold water. You got to stay hydrated in these days. So we are
especially
good
in the
to
desert.
go. Yep, yeah. I'm excited. It's gonna be fun.
All right, awesome.
Thanks. And by the way, hey, you guys want butter and syrup with those pancakes? That's serving.
We'll take them how you serve them, Link.
Serve them over there. Serve them over there. Okay.
Exactly. Thanks so much for rocking out with us today. Remember, if you like the show, hit that like and subscribe button. Also, follow us on our social media channels. We'll be back after the weekend, Monday morning, 7:30 a.m. Pacific time, 10:30 a.m. Eastern time. If you're a Raiders fan on the East Coast, thanks so much for rocking out with us, Raider Nation. We'll be back next week. Enjoy the weekend, and make sure to also keep up with the Q show Locked On Raiders to get all your updates during